Hi, I'm Michael Hartwig. I'm the head ref for the Kansas City region. As part of the coaches workshop, we're going to talk about the robot game. Okay, so you can see on here that my email address is there and I've got a website. That website gets updated throughout the year with anything that I think might be helpful to teams, including any questions that teams or coaches have asked about the rules that I've answered. I want to make sure everybody has the same information. PDF of these charts will be on the website. And of course, you can always rewatch the video if you need to. Okay, we're going to talk about a little bit about the missions. We're going to talk about how matches work and what actually happens, the steps that go through during a match, before, during, and after a match. For rookie teams, that's particularly useful to know. We'll talk about some rules changes that have happened this year and some problems that people repeatedly have with rules throughout the years. One thing about the rules, there's a summary of the scoring in the engineering notebook. Note that it's only a summary and it doesn't have the complete mission scoring rules. The kids need to look in the game guide to make sure they have those. And then I've got some suggestions based on my experience with FLL. Okay, I'm not going to go through the missions. You've got the first video that goes through them that works well and easy enough. So I'm just going to have you do that. If you watched it, great. You might want to consider rewatching it. If you and your kids have not watched it, you definitely need to watch it. You definitely need to have them watch it. I'm really excited about this year. I think this is a good, looks like it's going to be a good game. One of my prime criteria for deciding whether it's a good game or not is how friendly is it toward rookie and young teams. If there's a lot of things that rookies can do, it's a much better game than if they only have one or two things that are within their abilities. I want the kids to be excited. They want them to want to come back next year. If all they did was get frustrated because they couldn't make missions work and they saw this team over here doing 8 missions, that's discouraging. And it's unfortunate, but it is human nature, and that's not good. So this year, that is definitely not the case. There's a lot of missions here that are very, very well within a young team's abilities. I've got these in here just for future reference if you get the charts. But again, look at the video. It's right here. You can also always Google it to find it. I will note that if the kids inspect their robot and it fits in the small inspection area, 25 points. If they take the robot, set it down in the launch area, step back and don't touch it for the entire match, they'll end up with 85 points. Now, that's obviously not a great approach, and I think every team can score more than that. I think it's not unreasonable to think that a rookie team could get 150 points on this board. Don't take that as an expectation. Take it as a possibility. And definitely don't tell your kids that I said that. You don't want them picking missions based on what I think. You need missions based on what they think, especially if they attempt some next to impossible mission because they think it's going to look cool. It's going to be fun to do. They're here to have fun, so let them do that. I'd like to see that. In addition to the 150, there's another 100 or so points that are a little bit harder, but are also not unreasonable to think that young teams could do. So there's quite a few points here that are possible. I really do think it's going to be a good game, and I think kids will have a lot of fun with it. Try and make up for the fact that we don't have a normal season, maybe. Okay, so let's talk about what happens during a match. If you're at doing one of the in-person robot runs, this applies for the vast majority of you, hopefully. You're going to be submitting video and you get the next set of slides. So what happens, the kids will come to the table, the refs will have already had it set up properly. He or she should ask the kids if they think the the field is set up properly. If they're not, if the kids think otherwise, they need to point that out to the ref, let the ref fix anything that needs to be fixed, or explain why it's not right. After they're happy with the field setup, then they put their equipment in the inspection area and get it inspected. After we figure out whether they get the small bonus or not, they can calibrate sensors, set up their robot, pick the program, get ready to run, arrange their equipment at home, whatever they need to do to be ready. Set up the robot in the launch area, ready to go. When they say they're ready, start the countdown and then start the time to match. They'll do their 2.5 minutes, or they'll do however long they need to do. And if they're done before the 2.5 minutes, there's won't need to stand there. They'll go ahead and start scoring. The referee will go over the field with the kids and mark up the score sheet. The students will then sign it and take it to the scores table, where they'll run it through some software and come up with a score. Normally, before they sign the sheet, they get the opportunity to talk to the ref about where they think the ref might have made a mistake. And as long as they do that politely, then refs listen to them, and frequently, not frequently, but we certainly change our minds when we get something pointed out. This year, we aren't going to be able to do that. The kids, the teams that send in video are not going to have that opportunity. So to keep equity between those and the teams that are doing it in person, the kids are just going to have to accept what the refs say. So what that means is that the kids need to be really up on the mission rules and really know their stuff, so that they don't make mistakes, and the ref won't make mistakes. Anyway, it's unfortunate. It's just yet another thing that's unfortunate about the way this year's going to go, but I think we have to do it that way. Okay, for now, for the majority of you, here's what happens with the video. You run 3 videos on the same day. You don't run 12 videos and pick the best 3. You run 3 just like you would be at a tournament. Run practice match before if you want, but you don't need to film that. Don't film that. If one of those 3 is a disaster, you still need to submit it as a tournament run. Disasters happen in real tournaments, so there's nothing different about the video submission that says it should be any different. You're going to need to have what FIRST calls a non-biased monitor to make sure that stuff like only 3 videos is being done, and also that the rules are being followed. It'd be great if that person can function as the ref. It really shouldn't be a coach. You want to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest, so you get somebody. That's why the non-biased monitor. And if they're the person that can set up the field, that would be optimal. If they can function as a ref, that would be optimal. If they can't, then the coach or some other adult needs to be able to do that. So the same thing will happen. They'll set it up, get it set up. Kids come to the table, get the opportunity to correct anything. They can calibrate sensors. They can set up the weight machine if they're going to do that. At that point, you start the video. It needs to be set somewhere where it won't move. It needs to show the entire field and not be stopped at any time until you're completely done, which I'll show you in a couple of charts. At this point, the first thing they need to do is do their inspection. Show that it fits in the small inspection area. Last year, we didn't have a single team that didn't fit in the small inspection area. We had a couple of teams that had to take parts of their robot apart so that they could fit, but that was perfectly legal, and they went fine. So I fully expect that every team this year will be able to get the 25-point bonus for being small. Hope that's the case. After they've done their inspection, then they can arrange their equipment, set up the program so they're ready to run it as soon as they're allowed to when the countdown ends, and get set up in that launch area ready to go. Whoever's functioning as the ref needs to look at it and make sure that it actually is completely in the launch area and all the other launch rules are being followed. At that point, we're ready for the match to start. Now, one thing, if the kids come to the field with the same equipment for all 3 matches, there's no reason to re-inspect. If we see the first one, we can skip that. We can remember that the robot was small enough. That'll save some time on the video and just work out. Like I said, I expect everybody to be able to fit anyway, so this really shouldn't be an issue. Someone does a countdown, 3, 2, 1, Lego. Kids start, run the match, do the same thing, do the 2.5 minutes or until they're done. Somebody needs to act as the ref. That person needs to understand the rules. And I've got several rules here listed because those are some of the most common interactions a ref will have with the kids during a match. Set up properly for launches. What happens when they interrupt the robot? Do they get a touch penalty or not? And make sure you actually take the touch penalty. If cargo falls off the robot, what happens to it when it comes to rest? Those things happen a lot. There are other things that happen during a match as well, and the ref needs to be able to deal with those as well. So this year we're going to be doing volunteer training via video, just like we're doing Coaches Workshop. And it will really be good if whoever is going to be functioning as your ref watches the ref training videos. They'll be up in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure, but everybody will find out. The refs do need to know the rules. So whoever it is, and it should be one of the kids. After the match, the students need to point out we tried this one, we tried this one, we tried this one. These are the ones we did. As they're doing that, some adult should take the camera and give us a little bit closer view of whatever mission they're talking about. Some missions will require a very close view, others long or medium distance will be fine. Just make sure that whatever ref is reviewing the video and giving them their score has enough information to score them properly. There are 3 missions that have scoring criteria for an object being completely in the scoring area. Completely is defined in Rule 10. In those cases, if anything's close, give us a straight down top view so that we can see where the edges of the object are in relationship to the edges of the scoring area. We literally last year, and I mean literally, had multiple times where a millimeter was the difference between scoring and not scoring, or scoring completely in or scoring partially in. It happens, and it's really cool when you get this thing that's barely hanging over the line and you get to tell the kids, look, see, you're on the line, you get to score. They're excited. That's good. So we want to make sure that we can get everything they need to get all the points. You need to make sure the ref has everything he or she needs to make sure that the kids get all the points they've earned. Please move the camera smoothly. We don't want anybody puking on their laptop, and some people have weak stomachs. It's important. Notice I've said attempted. There's plenty of times where kids run a mission and they don't think they scored, so well, we'll get that next match. And the ref looks at it and said, you realize you got 20 points out of that, right? And so even if they think they didn't get it, show us enough on the video so that we can tell as we're reviewing the video and give them the right score. Try to be as efficient as possible with the video. Don't dwell on it. Show us the stuff for mission whatever, and then move on to the next mission, move on to the next mission. If all of the videos are 10, 12 minutes, it's going to take a long time to review them, and we're going to be quite possibly in danger of delaying awards determination because we don't have all the scores yet. So try and be efficient, please. There will be times that the kids have attempted something that might be on the edge of the rules, and it's depending on who interprets the rules that may or may not be able to count. If they have any of those things, while the video is still running, have them explain, they need to explain to the reviewing ref why they think they should get the points. This is not just we worked hard and therefore we need them. They need to provide specific rules and why they think that rule allows them to do whatever it is they did. It doesn't need to be a long dissertation, just enough so that we get an idea on what the kids are thinking and why they chose what they did. And then we can use that and decide whether or not they're right. Been plenty of times that the kids have an interpretation that I hadn't thought of quite the same way. Yeah, you're right. We'll give you the points. We want to make sure that they get all that. After all of the attempted missions have been recorded, and not only attempted missions, but missions that they accidentally did, stop the video. And by accidentally, for example, say the robot goes nuts and runs over the bench, the mission 4 bench, and rips the back off of it. Now, if they damage a mission during execution of the mission, then they don't get the points for it. But if they don't damage it, if the back's out, even though they didn't attempt to do that, they're going to still get the points for taking the back out of the bench. So even if they run into something and might be a score, show us that too, but also show us everything that they tried, whether they think they're going to get points for it or not. So any of these situations that might be on the edge of the rule, it really will behoove your team to find out well in advance if they're going to be able to get counted or not. That's part of the reason I have the email address and the website, so teams get the information and they can find out things well in advance. If they find out a month ahead of the tournament, they have plenty of time to adjust. If they find out when they get their score sheet, then it's just not good. And I'm busy, but I've got plenty of time to answer questions. I love to have the conversations with the kids, have the teams write their questions to me. That's a lot of fun for me. But if the coach needs to do that, that's fine too. If you need to send me video or pictures to really explain what they're trying to do, that's fine. I'll look at those. I'll let you know what I think, and then I'll put that information on the website so that any other team that might be thinking the same thing can also do that. Now, I understand there's a danger of you're giving away some super secret information that you think nobody else has thought of. That's certainly a possibility. And if you really think that you don't want anybody else to know, then don't ask me. But there's a risk there of being wrong. So your team has to decide what they want to do about those. But I really encourage you to email me with any questions about the rules of the robot game or the robots themselves, so you have plenty of time to react. Normally during in-person tournaments, we have a coaches meeting and we go over things that have happened in earlier tournaments that the coaches might not have known about. I'll go ahead and do that anyway. I'll prepare a document, put it on the website so that everybody has an opportunity to learn from the previous tournaments. I will try and put that on immediately after the previous tournament so that it's there early in the week as possible. But it's possible, of course, that if an update comes out or something happens and I need to change a ruling, it could get modified. So you definitely need to look at it the night before your tournament. It won't be changed after that. It won't be changed after late afternoon on Friday. I won't change anything on the website after Friday. To make sure that your kids have enough time to react to something that somebody else tried and wasn't valid either. So that'll be there, and hopefully that helps some teams. Okay, now let's talk about rules changes. If you're a rookie team, you can probably go to sleep or skip over this, but on the other hand, you might want to listen because you're not going to be a rookie next year. Every year, the rules are different. Every year, there are some rules that are the same. Every year there are some rules that are almost the same as the previous year. It's best to read the rules and try and just not think of the old rules. Get them out of your mind, pretend that everything is brand new, and learn the rules each year. You need to do that. Your kids need to do that. I know that that's easy to say. I know it's hard to do. I still remember some rules from Body Forward back in 2010, our first year, and I have to read the rules carefully, just like everybody else does. But you really need to try. So here's some important ones. Homes changed. Last year, we had a lot of problems. Teams launched. They came back to the launch area and thought that's where they could touch their robot. They could not because the launch area was not part of home. This is a really good change. Now that's not going to be a problem. They return to the launch area, they'll be in home, and all is good. This year, there's no launch height limit. Last year, it was 12 inches. Note that the inspection still has a 12-inch height limit. So that didn't change, but the launch itself, they can set up and be taller than 12 inches. Last year, if teams are using jigs, they couldn't touch anything that was outside of the launch area. So they couldn't set up a jig right next to the launch area and then push their robotic into it and have it touching it when they launched. That didn't fit the rules. They could have the jig totally in the launch area, and that would be okay. Or they could use the jig to set it up and then remove the jig so it wasn't touching before they launched. Well, this year that requirement isn't there. This is a really good example of Rule 23 that says if it's not mentioned, it doesn't matter. There's nothing that says that jigs can touch robots when they're outside of the launch area, but there are some hints that say it might be okay, and it definitely doesn't say that they can't. So it doesn't matter, and teams should be able to do that now. It used to be a requirement that everything had to be motionless before they launched. That's not there. I'm not sure what teams are going to do with this new ability, but I'm interested to find out. I'm sure somebody's going to come up with something interesting. We've had different rules for attaching mission models to things. That's changed a number of times since I've been a coach. This year, the rule is back and allows mission models to be attached lightly to or set with some part of the team's equipment. They need to be able to remove it immediately is the way the rule talks about. And of course they still can't take apart any mission models. They have to stay intact. The way that stranded cargo is being managed, stranded cargo is something that comes loose from the robot. If the rules have been simplified, the teams get to keep the cargo more than they would have last year, but there's also a chance that they could lose a precision token with the touch penalty. So that's an important rule to know. And like I said, just assume that everything's different and try and read it with a fresh mind. There's an interesting insignificant change in Rule 1 that actually could affect somebody. I seriously doubt it's going to affect a lot of teams, but in the region. The statement says, use only building pieces, not packaging, clothing, and so on. I've seen teams do things like Harry Potter capes to help shield their light sensor. That's not going to be allowed this year. I'm not sure that I could count a minifig as being a building piece. So I think technically there's no minifigs on robots, but there's no way I'm going to be upset at some team decorating their robot with a minifig. I think that's great. If they're using the minifig to manipulate a mission model, that's kind of iffy. But again, I like to see the kids have fun with that. And if they want to put drivers on it, I've seen robots with literally 20 minifigs on it. Kids have fun, that's great. So anyway, keep those in mind. There are other changes, of course, so read the rules and with as fresh a mind as you possibly can. Okay, I've been doing coaches workshops for a long time now, and this list of rules has been almost the same every year. teams do the same thing in tournaments that they've done in that other teams have done in previous years. So these are things that if your kids are aware of, they can hopefully avoid them in their tournament matches. There's a very specific list of electronic equipment, of any equipment that can be part of the team's equipment in Rule 1. And the only electronics are the robot brick, whether it's RCX or NXT or EV3 or Spike Prime, doesn't matter, but they only get the brick, they get motors and the sensors and the wires that attach them, and they get a battery. Not allowed to use phones, especially not to control the robot. No computers. We've had teams literally try and reprogram their robot at a tournament during a match. That's not allowed. Obviously, cameras are okay, and if you're filming in your own workshop, that's probably going to be even easier to control. If they're going to use a phone as a camera, that's okay too, but it's only taking pictures, or video. It's not using them for anything that affects the match. Wires, teams will build robots with the wires hanging all over the place. They line up in the launch area and the wire hangs over the south wall or over the west edge of the launch area or even on the front of the launch area. They're part of the robot. They have to be in the launch area. So your teams, when they're building them, help them figure out how to get those wires so they don't stick out all over the place. Not only does it help them with the launch, but the wires aren't going to catch on some mission model and screw up the steering or the path that the robot's following. Kids will have the tendency, they want to line the robot up very precisely, and then they start it, realize they didn't have it right where they wanted, and they tap it. Now, when they tap it, it's an interruption. In previous years, they would have got a touch penalty for that. This year, there's a rule that's changed that says as long as they're still within the launch area, they don't get a penalty. They do still have to restart it, but they don't get a penalty. But if they wait too long, they're going to end up getting a touch penalty along with having to restart the robot. And that's a natural thing for the kids to do. I understand why they do it, but it's not allowed. This is another thing that you hopefully can work with them when they're practicing to try and get them to not do that. Teams will take apart mission models or connect them in the wrong way to something. They can't do that. A biggie is not so much a violation, but it's a problem, is kids will start touching stuff before the refs had a chance to record everything with them. And if they do that, they can mess up their score. A lot of times in tournaments, the kids are trying to be helpful. They want to clean up so the next team can start their match. And while that's admirable that they want to be helpful, and I appreciate that, they're setting themselves up for not being able to get all the points they get if they disturb something. So make sure they don't touch anything before the scoring has all been recorded. List of resources. There's a lot of good stuff out there. These are some of the places that I think have been very helpful. The First Steps, if you're a rookie coach, is a good place to go. Obviously, the challenge and all the materials for that. And of course, I'll say it again, my website is a place that you should go to because you find out things that apply to your team at their tournament. Okay, here's some suggestions. You don't have to follow them, obviously. These are just things that I found in being a coach for 11 years. And if they're helpful to you, great. If they're not, okay, that's fine. Make sure your kids know the rules. Okay, if they don't know the rules, they end up solving the wrong problem. And if they solve the wrong problem, they aren't going to get points for it. So there's all sorts of ways this can happen. They could set the field up wrong because they didn't read the setup instructions properly. They didn't understand the way the mission was going to be scored or some other rule, and so they end up doing something that doesn't help them. It's not really a rules thing, but sometimes they just wishful thinking. Yeah, we're going to keep running this. It's going to work this time. that's not really a rule, like I said, but it is trying to solve the problem in the wrong way. When they have questions, make them answer them. What happens in this mission? Well, what did the rules say? Did you look it up? No. We'll go look it up and bring it over here and we'll talk about it. Get them so they're not relying on you or any of the other mentors for their rules interpretations. When they're at the table, they can't be talking to you and you can't be talking to them about rules. So you need to make sure that they know them ahead of time. The other thing that that does is it really solves the game problem. And if they're not understanding them, they'll make stuff up or assume something that isn't really the case. Example, say there's a mission where you put a cup on a table. Well, that mission model isn't really a table. So if the mission rules don't say you have to set it up right, it can be on a side, it can be upside down, it doesn't matter. As long as it's on the table, it fulfills the rules. Subconsciously, a lot of people are just going to, when they put the cup on, well, we have to set it up because that's how you set cups on tables. Well, if that's not a rule, they're making it harder for themselves. That mission model is not a table. It's just a bunch of Lego that provide a flat platform to put some object on so they can score points. So it's easy to think that these are real world objects. They're not. And the mission rules, if they follow them as they're written, that will help them avoid making some of those kind of assumptions. Really important to get the rules and understand all the source of rules and in what order they apply. Updates, there haven't been that many this year as previous years. I expect we'll have more, so they need to know those. Goes down, and of course, if nothing's clear with the first four, then I'm the one that decides and helps out. So they need to understand that the updates are more important than what the rules text says. Understand the order. Updates, again, somebody should be watching for updates, checking every week. You have one of your kids be the rules person, a couple of your kids be the rules persons, and part of their job is to make sure that they have all the updates. Updates change things and can be significant in teams' ability to score or not score on missions. I think it's really important that you help guide the kids to do experiments instead of just guessing or making assumptions or try something, see if it works, and then change it, try it out. They need to be making changes in a directed manner. They need to be designing and making decisions based on real world data, not what they hope it to be. So if they decide they're going to test something, they should actually do that, record the data, look at it, set up an alternative, do that one, record the data, and make good decisions about which is a better approach. Whether that's different groups of kids doing the different approaches or the same kid, it doesn't matter, but if they make decisions based on what actually happens, they're going to be better off than if they make decisions based on what they hope happens. Kids will quite often be over-optimistic and they'll decide we're going to do these 10 missions. Well, none of you have ever built or programmed a Mindstorms robot before. That might be a little over-ambitious. So work with them to try and get them to a reasonable set of goals. Obviously, they're going to feel better if they have a smaller goal and they need it than if they have a bigger one and they don't need it. And if their goal is to do 4 missions and they do them, they're going to feel great. Hey, we did exactly what we wanted to do. If their goal is 10 missions and they only do 5 of them, they're going to be disappointed. Well, we didn't do what we wanted. And even though the 5 is bigger than the 4, it's more likely that they're not going to get as much out of it. So help them make realistic goals. And obviously, if they meet that, then they add more missions or they spend more time on the project or whatever they need to spend time on. But it'll help their attitude and it'll help how they feel about their results. For you that are sending in video, this doesn't apply, but if you're going to do something in person, and hopefully next year when we all do things in person, the kids have to understand that the tables and the mission models aren't going to be exactly like yours at home. and they need to do their programming and their attachments and their planning to take that into account. And this is probably my biggest suggestion, other than knowing the rules, is practice under actual match conditions. If the kids haven't tried doing their missions in 2.5 minutes, when they do it for the first time, they're going to be really surprised how short a time that is. If they practice with the 2.5 minutes, they're going to get used to that. They're going to make themselves more efficient, figure out ways to change out attachments more quickly, or whatever they're going to do. That will help them. And when I mean under match conditions, I mean under match conditions. Time it, score it, and record it. And we've done things like, we'll do things, have practice missions, and we'll record the scores and we put them up on the wall, and the high scores, they get bragging rights. So they enjoy doing that. We normally have multiple teams. So that works with that. If you only have one team, maybe not, but they can still feel good about their high scores and improving a high score. But more importantly than that, it's that they will be more ready for the tournament if they've actually run tournament matches. Okay. Can't ask me questions, unfortunately, but you can email me. There's also the live Q&A on the 14th that you can ask questions. You may want to ask me beforehand. And I know I've said this a lot, but it's really important. I'm available to help you guys out and help your teams out. And you should be able to use that. So email me, ask me about rules, ask me about the robot, ask me about mission strategy. I might not answer those quite as concisely as I would a rules question, but I'm there. Find out ahead of time what's going to happen at the tournament. So it's there. Thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of this. If you haven't already, I've got another video that talks about results of last year and a little bit about the designs that teams used last year. So anyway, hope you got this, and I hope you and your teams have a great year. Thanks.